Breaking news from the NBA. James Harden of the Brooklyn Nets suffers a setback. The Nets say the setback happened during on-court rehab on Monday, with the MRI revealing just that, to that hamstring injury. So he is now out indefinitely. Steve Nash said, quote, he'll be back when he's back. That may not be until the playoffs. Let's bring in Bill Reiter. And Bill, this has been like a continuing story all season long with the Brooklyn Nets regarding health and regarding Kevin Durant and James Harden. Durant just suffered another injury, so he's sidelined again. With regards to Harden and that hamstring setback, what does this mean to a team that's only started their big three 6 times this season?
Yeah, you said it. These guys have only played together a handful of times. And it means, Jim, that the biggest question mark in the NBA. In fact, I talked to a number of general managers about this over the last week before this injury news, before we knew he'd be delayed in his return. They just don't know. I don't think the Nets know. Certainly their competitors in the Eastern Conference don't know, and folks out west don't know what they're going to be in the playoffs when they get together, because we've barely seen it. Yes, they're massively talented. Yes, it's a daunting task if all 3 guys are healthy and together to try and stop them. But in terms of what they're going to be when the going gets tough, when they get punched in the chin in a playoff series, if they can get in rhythm, what that looks like, it's a huge question mark.
Bill, with regards to the Nets, you watched this team at the outset of the season before Harden arrived versus when he really kind of took control of that point guard position. And it seemed everything changed once he took over as the point guard with regards to continuity to that offense. And the team really got on a roll out west. Since he's been gone, if you watch this team play on a nightly basis, they've really showed themselves a lot how they were prior to his arrival. How important is it to have him, particularly him, on this team for a postseason run?
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways to look at it. You're right. They were a really interesting and impressive basketball team when Harden was healthy and in his groove. I think Joel Embiid just said this. He adjusted his game to be the secondary star, because most nights when he was out there, he was playing with Kyrie Irving or maybe with Kevin Durant. Rarely did they play together, but was really able to make everyone around him better. Yep. And again, I don't want to dodge the question, because he has been critically important to what they do. And if you put all 3 of those guys on a team, most GMs I've talked to around the league, most players I've talked to, they just don't know how you stop all 3 guys. There's some defensive questions. But without Harden, it's hard to know how good they're going to be over the next month or so, because Kevin Durant is still someone they're keeping an eye on in terms of injuries. And Kyrie Irving, for his own reasons, has been inconsistent in terms of his availability. And if he's not with them for the postseason, again, they're good, they're dangerous, but they don't feel as unstoppable. But you're right. I mean, you can make the case that James Harden, not just the most important net when he was healthy, but outside of Nikola Jokic, maybe the most valuable player in the NBA over his time with the Nets when he was actually able to be out there.
So Steve Nash says he'll be back when he'll be back. You have to imagine at this juncture, because the Nets also had a setback when Kevin Durant was initially trying to come back as well. You have to imagine the Nets are going to be ultra conservative with regards to the rest of the regular season. Do you suppose this team, and really the seeding in the Eastern Conference, is really irrelevant to trying to get these 3 stars on the court together at some point for the second season?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do think the Nets are going to be incredibly cautious, and that is one of the things that decision makers around the association have stressed to me and to other people, that injuries this year aren't like injuries in other years. The condensed offseason, the fact that this is a condensed regular season, for a lot of folks means it's really hard to just know how much time you give guys. I had a couple GMs tell me with normal players, just, Jim, the normal wear and tear of an NBA season, where normally you might give them a night off here and there, they don't know whether to play these guys when they normally would, because it is a very crowded Eastern and Western Conference field, or whether you give guys an extra 2 or 3 days off, because there's a real sense there are going to be a cascading number of injuries just because of the weird nature of this year, the COVID protocols, just the bizarre reality of how little time there was in the offseason. And we've seen that. I mean, this past weekend, literally 20 of the best 30 players in the NBA, you could argue, either were out with injury or left games because of injury. And so I think the Nets, like a lot of the NBA, are going to be extremely conservative with James Harden because this is a setback, because it happened while he was recovering, and because for them at least, the entire goal, everything they need is for that big three to be healthy for the postseason, for them to live up to what are championship or bust expectations this year.
Hey, Bill, one more for you with regards to Harden. This is a player that, like LeBron, right? He plays all the time. Yet he did have that circumstance with the Rockets at the outset of the season, trying to get his way out of Houston. He put on a few pounds, maybe didn't look in the greatest shape at the outset of this campaign. How much do you think that might be playing a role in where he is right now with this injury?
I can tell you that there are people around the NBA, scouts and some executives, who certainly think this is what's going on. Now, I haven't talked to anyone about this over the last few hours before the news came down that this injury for James Harden and MRI had revealed that there's a real hamstring issue and he's going to be out indefinitely. But even last week, there was a sense, to your exact point, that, yeah, Kevin Durant, it wasn't my term, someone else's, can be a little Humpty Dumpty-ish. And, yeah, Anthony Davis can be a little Humpty Dumpty-ish. And so it makes sense in this year that some of those pieces might be hard to be put back together again. But you're right, James Harden, whatever you think of him, transcendent talent, hasn't had the success, the ultimate success he's won in the postseason, has been durable. I mean, the guy's had historically high usage rates on top of the fact that he's been healthy over the course of his time in Houston. But yeah, I mean, certainly a GM I can recall, and several scouts said, when you're not in shape, when you're not conditioned, even if because you're put out or you're angry, you don't want to be somewhere, that can catch up to you in any year when there hasn't been as much time in the offseason for your body to recover. When you've got more games swooshed into a smaller period of time, it can create real problems. And that's probably one of the big things that's going on, not just with Harden, but with a lot of guys who didn't take care of themselves, who might have been a little overweight, who might have said to themselves, to hell with it, I'm going to enjoy my time off. The NBA is going to make me come back earlier than they should. I'll deal with it when I get there. There are consequences physically for that.
Yeah, great points, great points. As James Harden suffers a setback with regards to that hamstring injury, our thanks to HQ NBA insider Bill Reiter. And you have to imagine these numbers are going to change here with regards to the title odds. You see where the Nets are right now. You have to wonder, Joe, if ultimately that's going to skew in a different direction if Harden and or KD are out.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.